Fourth stall, chapter 16. This is a big chapter. I knew that something was wrong the moment I got home from school that day. As soon as I stepped through the door, my mom called out to me, "Christian, honey, you have a friend here in the kitchen." I was immediately suspicious. All of my friends were at home. I had just parted ways with them a few minutes ago. Whoever was waiting for me in the kitchen, I had a feeling this was not going to be someone I wanted to see. I walked down the hallway, turned the corner, and there he was. I didn't know who it was at first, despite the fact that he looked kind of familiar. Or maybe deep down I really did know, but just didn't want to believe it. He sat in the kitchen at the kitchen table, looking like some kind of a salesman. He wore a clean sweater and dress pants, but it was a bad disguise. You can't hide Staples' kind of menace from someone who knows what to look for. It would be like trying to disguise a lion by dressing him up as in a pink tutu. It's still going to eat you no matter what it's wearing. Apparently, though, his clothes and smile had been enough to fool my mom for letting him into our kitchen. It probably didn't help that my mom is a kind person who calls everyone sweetie or dear. She thinks everyone who is uses polite words and has a smile is a nice young man. My mom wasn't such a great cook. I'd say she's nuts. Other than the neat and clean appearance, Staples was a monster. He was huger than huge, like a human version of a grizzly bear crossed with the shark from Jaws and a giant troll. And despite his dress clothes and smiling face, he still looked mean enough to eat little kittens and puppies like they were fruit snacks. His eyes bragged of inhuman intelligence. They were sharp, as if just a glance could gash your cheek like a razor blade. He was definitely still a teenager, but in the right lighting, he could have easily passed for 22. He had a shaved head with dark stubble for hair just starting to grow back. He also had the beginnings of a beard, every bit as prickly dark and menacing as his hair. His eyebrows were bushy and his jaw was square like a pro athlete on steroids. He smelled like cheap cologne, and if death and destruction had an odor, he would have smelled like that too. Something told me the smile on Staples' face was not there to make me feel better, and it didn't. A plate of Oreo cookies sat in front of him, and he slowly brought one to his mouth and took a bite. I swear I heard the Oreo scream faintly as his teeth sank in. I was still trying to convince myself that this was really happening and that Staples was really sitting at my kitchen table when my mom came over and poured him a glass of milk. She smiled at me and winked. She clearly didn't know who she was dealing with. How could she? Staples probably did look like a nice guy to someone nice to and a nice young man. Whoops, where was I? Nice young man. Nice guy to someone as trusting as my mom, someone who'd never heard any of our stories. "Thank you, Mrs. Barrett," Staples said in a deep but polite voice. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I tried to close it, but nothing happened. I thought my jaw was broken. I began to wonder if I'd ever be able to talk again. I panicked. "Do you want some milk, Christian?" my mother asked. "No, no thanks," I said, relieved that my jaw and voice were still working again. "Okay, I'll give you and your friend some privacy then." She left the kitchen. I wanted to yell out for her to stay, but I didn't. This was between Staples and me, not my mom. I couldn't drag her into this. "So we finally meet. I've been looking forward to this, Christian." Staples smiled. It was the sort of smile that a hyena might give a rotting zebra carcass. He had to use my real name. Nobody but family did that. "Please, have a seat," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. I sat down and tried to look calm. I was everything but calm. I was even afraid for my mom right now. I didn't think she could defend herself against this monster sitting in our kitchen. Staples' smile grew wider. "It's really hot in here," he said, pulling at his sweater. "Do you mind?" Without waiting for a response, he took off the sweater. He wore a simple white t-shirt underneath that revealed a pair of thick arms covered in tattoos. His arms were so muscular that his veins looked as if they were trying to escape his body. They wriggled like worms in rain with every movement of his hand. His tattoos covered his arms like second sleeves. One of them read "The Creek" in Old English style lettering, but the others were all so bunched together that I couldn't even make them out. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, and then took a drink of milk. It would have been much more fitting had it been a glass of blood. I nodded, but said nothing. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" He had some milk. He had a milk mustache. I just looked at him. He laughed. It was evil, but it sounded easy, as if he laughed a lot. "So you're going to sit there and act all tough, right? That's not a bad strategy. It might even work on some of our little wusses at your school. But I can see right through it, Christian." He gave me a stare that almost melted my bones. I half expected to turn to jelly and slide right off the chair onto the floor, forming a small pile of cowardly goo, but I just shrugged. That only made him laugh more. I thought I saw an Oreo cookie flinch as he reached out to grab another one off the plate. Did your parents enjoy the decorating that we did this week? He asked. It seems as if he was having the time of his life. Yeah, the red paint went well with our white house, thanks, I managed to say as casually as I could. He just laughed again. Do you like what we did to your collector last week? I asked, interrupting his laughter. I'd heard enough of it already. He looked at me, and his eyes turned black. You're a dead man, Christian, he said. Yeah, you said that a few times. Why am I still here then? I know it was you who tried to run me over, and I still outran you, on my bike no less, I said. I wished I would stop talking. I was only digging my grave deeper, even deeper. Staples slammed his fist onto the table. The milk glass rattled and spun and almost tipped over before settling. An Oreo cookie flipped off the plate. We both looked at it, and then he snatched it up and ate it in one bite. After swallowing, he scoffed. Christian, Christian, I always did like to play with my food before eating it. I want to watch as your business crumbles right out from under you. I'll be there laughing as you cry because you've lost everything. Mark my words, you'll be left with no money, no employees, no business, and no friends. Then you'll realize how much you had and how much you've lost. And then, only then, after I've enjoyed your suffering for a while, will I finally destroy you, he said, leaning forward. His eyes seemed to vibrate. His mouth twitched into a smile. Then he rubbed the corner of his left eye and sat back in his chair again. You'll really think you'll be able to do all that? I asked, letting a grin sneak up to my lips. Staples grinned back. His confidence was making me nervous. And you know how I feel about being nervous. What did he know that I didn't? What tricks were up his sleeve? I guess you'll just have to wait to find out, he finally said. Will I? Maybe just the opposite is happening. Maybe I'm taking you down, Stables. He smirked. Oh, Christian, you've got guts, I'll give you that. You know, I could use a guy with your combination of brains and guts. I suppose I could hold off on destroying your life if you'd like to come and work for me instead. I think we could really help a lot of kids and make a lot of money if we joined forces, don't you think? Plus, that way, you get to live. He gave me a big smile. I wondered if his offer was a trick or if he really wanted me to work for him. Either way, I'd refuse. I didn't like that sort of business he ran. Plus, he seemed a little too psychotic to be a good boss. No thanks, I said, as calmly as I could. It's too bad you have to be so stubborn, he said. I guess we're back to destroying you then. You're going to have paid dearly by the time I'm finished too. You'll be wishing that you had never been born, that I promise, and I don't break promises. A long silence followed. It seemed like he was waiting for me to crack. Every once in a while, he would snatch another cookie off the plate and put it in his mouth. He always chewed slowly and quietly with his mouth closed, and his almost black eyes never left my face. Didn't this guy ever blink? After almost a few minutes, he spoke again. It's too bad it had to be like this, Christian. You seem pretty smart. You remind me a lot of myself when I was in grade school. That's too bad, I said. He laughed. He laughed for almost a minute while I just sat there. See, you're a funny guy, Christian. It's hard not to like you. As he said it, his fist closed around an Oreo he had been holding. It pulverized into a clumpy mess of cream filling and black crumbs. I wanted him to stop using my real name. I kept looking at his facial hair. He had a beard and tattoos. How did I get involved in a war against this guy? How did I stand a chance? Well, I'd best be off now, Staples said. My dog needs to be fed. Hey, did you know that pit bulls eat just about anything you feed them? Cool, huh? With that, Staples got up, finished his milk, and walked past me into the living room. I heard the front door open and close a few seconds later. He left me there with a half-empty plate of Oreos and a bunch of questions rattling around in my head like popcorn. Did he know about our plan? It seemed unlikely, but then again, the timing of this visit was pretty suspicious. I really hated the thought that he might know more than I did. I had a bad feeling about the whole thing, but I'd find out tomorrow. If my plan worked, it would deal him a blow that he wasn't expecting. My mom came back into the kitchen. Oh, your friend left? He seemed like such a nice young man, she said. I rolled my eyes and reached out for the plate of Oreos, if only she knew. I spent the evening balancing my books for the new business we'd taken in that day. That was normally Vince's job, but I hadn't talked to Vince much that day. I guess we were still a little mad at each other, though I still had no idea why he would be mad at me. I also hadn't really been able to stop thinking about Vince's answer to my question about our funds at the lake cabin. Plus, I wasn't really I was really starting to panic about the Cubs game. It would make me feel better to do a funds check. I actually to actually hold and see and count that kind of cash makes it feel more real. Usually, whenever I'm worried about money for some reason or another, simply doing the funds check makes me feel better, reminding me that it's still there, that all we worked for still exists, and that trip to the Cubs World Series game is actually possible. Once my parents were asleep, I retrieved all of our funds from the hiding spot in my room and began counting and verifying against the amounts I had in my books. It was near the end of counting that I realized something was off. A few days before, at the lake, Vince said we had $5,962 in total. And that's what my books worked out to as well. But once I added the game and emergency funds along with what my books said, we had in Tom Petty cash back in my office. We were short a few $100 and change. The game fund and emergency fund matched my books, so that meant that the discrepancy was somewhere in the Tom Petty cash. The Tom Petty cash was basically all of our daily operation money that we heard some businessmen in this movie call some extra money petty cash once. So we decided to steal the name. Tom Petty is actually some musician my dad listens to sometimes, and we decided just plain petty cash is too boring. It's like Vince sometimes says, "We call a spade when you call it whatever you want." Our Tom Petty cash was all the money we used to make loans to kids, spend on business related materials, pay employees' salaries, etc. It's all the money we have and use that doesn't go to the game or emergency fund. This had to be an error in my books. We've been paying out so much lately. With all the Staples commotion, it'd be pretty easy to miss something, right? To forget to write something down? It had to be, because otherwise it meant someone was stealing cash from us. It certainly could have been Brady, given how many times we left him alone in the office to watch Fred. But then again, the cash box is hidden in the bathroom trash can, and the only other two people who know where it is are Vince and Joe, and Vince and I are the only ones with the key to the box itself. This is the reason I actually left the books to Vince, to avoid headaches like this. I was going to have to figure this out tomorrow. Hopefully, this was just a case of some bad bookkeeping on my part, but my brain kept wandering back to Vince's weird response to my question at the cabin. I chose to keep ignoring it.